What is up, people? It is I, Caribus136. I'm here with patch 7.26b. This patch is a little bit confusing, but also it's not really that long as far as like length physically, but it actually has a litany of changes that are glossed over in it. So I'm going to be playing right after this. I should have started this earlier, but I was playing Warzone with Nettie and Furry, so sue me. So we'll just dive right into the patch so I can make this video rather quick. Denies no longer grant gold. The thing here is going to be that safe laners are going to have less money when you're picking a safe, strong safe lanes, like even like a, I don't even know, like a Sven, and like maybe a Bane. It's going to be rough because you're going to get less gold for both you and your support. Conversely, this actually lowers the farm in general because off lanes often are dominating the meta prior to this this entire patch. So because of that, those off laners are also going to get less money for their denies. In addition, deny XP given to enemies increased by 10%, meaning that when you deny, it's just not as painful. They still don't get the last hit. They still get less experience, but they're kind of making it like it's not super punishing. I think it's going to be less and less important to have off lanes like Stomp. It still matters, but you just don't get as much from it. Less money to be had from denies. The safe laner still gets more experience from it, which is nice for safe laners like myself. Melee creep's base bounty was increased by 5. This means the wave is worth a lot more. Things were decreased by 10%, if everybody recalls. So I actually don't know the exact number, and I should have looked it up earlier, but I can get that number in like 1 second. It's actually very easy to achieve because someone posted something on our Discord. So all of these changes, a lot of these, there's actually an in-depth list. So all I have to do is Control F and do melee and go down to their particular thing. Gold min used to be 29 from the after the patch hit it. So the increase is about 15%. I'm going to call it. I'm not 100% sure because it also changes the super creep and all that, but we'll just call it 15%. And recently they were lowered by 10%. So it's actually buffing it further than it was, and since there's more melee creeps than anything else in the wave, that's a pretty big improvement. Neutral creeps were base bounty was increased back 10% because it was reduced last patch. This is going to increase safe laners' ability to actually carry the game by farming the jungle and coming back to team fights. It's going to make it so there's a lot more money on the map. And it's always bigger for heroes that want to snowball. Now, granted, that will not change. Like, if I was to ignore all of these other things that happened, I wish I could scroll up, but so you can see all this. But if I was to ignore every other change in this patch and just say, like, oh, there's more money for safe laners, that doesn't really change the fact that people are fighting earlier and earlier and games are ending earlier, which is funny enough. Before this patch hit, which was yesterday, I played 11 games. I lost 10 of them, all ranked, 1-1. So I just dropped so much MMR, and I was determined that safe lane just wasn't for me anymore because the way the meta is changing to allow less farming, it's more fighting. I was just going to be a third position. I was done. But they changed it, so now it's easier to get money, but that doesn't stop that meta. What does stop that meta is all talents are now about 20% weaker. Now, what does that mean? Well, basically, anything that's on or off or doesn't have a numerical value, example, Nether Toxin silences, Poison Attack affects towers, Blink leaves illusion behind, things like that. They're either on or they're off. There's no percentage difference. So this actually won't affect those at all. What this does affect is, if you had 10 armor, now you might have, 8 armor on a talent. Because of this, the heroes that get to level 10 and 15, for example, are actually going to be less impactful than they used to be. Because compared to the heroes that used to, that don't have 10 or 15 at all because they're level 9, let's just say. They're all level 9, your team's level 10, you try to take advantage of that early game advantage. You actually have less of a difference between you and that enemy team, meaning that death ball meta is actually harder because the talents just all matter less. The heroes who get the best benefit out of this are heroes who want the game to last longer and heroes whose talents are less numerically based. Viper is an example because he has multiple talents that don't care. They don't change at all. Towers now grant 1 HP regen aura for tier 1 and 3 for all the others. This is huge, actually. As much as 1 HP regen isn't dramatic, it just means it's easier and easier for like a safe laner because the creeps are almost always closer to the tower to stay in the game. Because you're just always getting that health if you're pushed near a tower. And it makes it harder for someone like Axe to cut because it's easier for them to fight Axe near the tower because they won't take so much damage, and the creeps will always be pushing out if there's any creeps under the tower, even though there's only a few because like he got some of them, but he had to back up because you kind of pushed him out. Since they'll heal under the tower too, it means your creeps under your tower will win against their creeps and kind of push them back a little bit. And the fact that it does it later means it's much harder to push under tier 2s because all the heroes are healing for 3, as are the creeps. So if, you know, the enemy creeps are hitting your creeps in a tower, your creeps should just win, even without the tower hitting them. Even that irrelevant. It's just because they have the extra HP regen. XP required to reach levels 9 through 13 was increased notably, actually. Very notably. By over 100 at almost all levels. It's 110, I think, at all levels. A little bit more than that, actually. Because of that, it's going to be harder to get those levels. And those are usually the clinch levels that involve the Death Ball meta. Because that's when you're hitting your first talent. That's when you're hitting, you know, your second level vault at 12. And because of that, it's going to stop people from being able to be like, I'm so much stronger because I just hit this level. I'm going to suddenly start scaling. It's like, no, you're really going to scale slower there, which is really nice to see because a lot of heroes who are going to try to like 3 positions are going to try to like just run with the game, or mids, they can't as much. Reliable gold is now given only for passive income, meaning that hero kills are not reliable gold, and Roshan and towers as well, I believe. This is huge. It means that you are in great risk to fight. If you fight and lose, even if you get a kill or 2 on the way, that gold is still up to be lost. So if I dive as a tier 3 and I kill the support before, that money is secure. It's reliable. So if I die, I don't lose anything. I just lose a little bit of my money that might have been from creeps, but not too much. Maybe 100 of my gold was unreliable, but I get 200 reliable. So I actually still get a net gain from the experience, let alone the fact that he lost some money, and I get some experience. Now, that money I gain is also up to be lost. Some of it was up to be lost. So it's much harder to trade kills. It's really bad to take a team fight that could go like against you because the reliable gold will be lost. The unreliable gold. AoE gold was increased in team fights. It's what happens when someone else kills the hero, but you're part of it. It got increased. It's the same static value added, but the number that's done to the power of net worth got increased, meaning that there's more gold to be had from AoE gold, meaning that a team fight is a little bit more beneficial than it used to be as far as getting money from it. This is the one change they made that does benefit from team fights. Neutral item drop times for tier 1 to 4 have all changed, minus tier 1. I don't even know why they included it, but it still starts at 7, but now it takes longer for those later ones to get online, but not 4s. 4s are actually 3 minutes earlier, which is nice because they always felt like they were kind of an outlier, even though they were... Because it increases by 8. It used to increase by 8, 10, 15. Now it's 10, 10, 10. It's every 10 minutes. It feels better that way. It's going to change too, though, because it's longer to get your tier 2 items and longer to get your tier 3 items. Because of that, it's going to give you more time where people can't deathball you by getting like a sudden, you know, they suddenly get control of the jungle and they have the tier 2 items like instantly, or probably not 2, but tier 3 items. So this is actually going to elongate the game. Tier 2, this is one of my favorite changes. Tier 2 and further towers have their health increased by 500, which is dramatic, because the effective health obviously goes up dramatically because they have a ton of armor. So 500 means a lot. And the damage was increased by 25. This especially matters when you fortify, because when you fortify, each of those hits is 25 higher. Much easier to clear a creep wave that's pushing into you. And also has a chance to kill heroes, because when the supports kind of dive in the tower with his team, tier 2, the chance that the tower hits during a fortify is already enough to scare a lot of supports. Now that does more damage. It actually might kill somebody, just by itself, if the support wasn't at like full health. So this is really making that diving under towers much harder, and making pushing harder in general. Towers have HP regen, they heal those creeps, they do more damage, they have more health. You know, it's a big difference. Healing salves duration was increased from 8 to 10, but the same overall heal, meaning it heals slower. This is a nerf. It takes longer for you to get a healing salve to actually get you going, so you have to back up for longer, or risk it being interrupted. It also means that burst heal to try to suddenly not die is less viable. Because basically someone is going to be hitting you, you're like, oh, quick salve to get some health. It's actually going to heal you less if it's a quick salve, so like it's not really going to do anything for you. Gloves of Haste got their costs increased by 450. Gloves of Haste built into 4 items. So I would like to note my favorite change about this. Midas is more expensive. It takes even longer to pay off. Now instead of like 22 minutes or whatever, it's probably like 23. So I love that. So that's great. Treads are more expensive, which is probably needed. I think treads were probably just the best boot. You know, So it's nice to see they got a little bit more expensive. Armlet's more expensive, and that's totally fair. A lot of people were buying armlets. They still are. Drum got more expensive, making it a little bit less viable, to be honest with you. I don't know how I feel about Drum. It's not a bad item, and there's some heroes who can still pick it up as a niche thing, but it's really expensive. Blades of Attack also got increased by 20, a much smaller increase. So Treads and Phase are very similarly priced. Phase are still 100 gold more, but they're much closer. This does increase the price of Armlet again. Yeah, right, exactly. Armlet gets increased by this change as well. So because of the two changes, Armlet actually went up by 70. I think that's very important to note. Armlet's a lot more expensive. I think it's 70, right? Am I wrong? 50 plus 20. Yeah, 70. Okay, that was crazy. Oops. So that's a pretty big change. Crystallis as well. It only builds into Daedalus. It's not really a big deal, but it does make the item worse. You know, it matters. It matters when things get increased costs, so it's nothing to shake a stick at. Bring a Basilius got the cost increased by 25. This actually makes it so that if you buy a Basilius first as a support, you can only afford one set of Tangos. You cannot afford two. And since you're often sharing in safe lane Tangos with mid, that means you literally can't just start with a Basilius. It's just not tenable. Except maybe on like a Warlock, I guess, but it's definitely trying to nerf that early game Basilius. In addition to that, it makes items that build out of Basilius worse. So like Veil now, I'm kind of thinking is not really worth almost anything on most heroes. I'm thinking this item's dying now, even though this change is minor. And Vlad's is more expensive too, and since it's received a nerf pretty much every patch for a while now, I'm really skeptical of Vlad's as a good item in most games. So I think we're going to see a lot less of those items. I think this is a really big change. Hood of Defiance now has a 200 gold recipe. Obviously, it only builds into pipe. So the hood itself, you don't often see a value hood. It just means that it's harder to get that value hood. It's less valuable. And that pipe is delayed. It's going to be longer for you to get a pipe. So I really like to see that because pipe is a super strong item right now, especially. So I'm glad that it's a little bit nerfed as far as the cost is concerned. The biggest changes for sure that there's more money to be had, harder to push, games will last longer, and some stuff does cost a little bit more to balance it out. I'm fine with that. I don't mind that treads, cost more. I think that's totally fair. What's the other reason that treads are more expensive than phase? Sorry, less. Oh yeah, it's the chainmail. Chainmail costs 100 more. It's funny because treads now are a little bit less efficient compared to phase boots because they got their price increased a little bit more by 30 more or whatever. But I don't know. I still don't know if it's really a fair comparison. The only differences that you see is that phase boots do, if you're melee, specifically if you're melee, 8 more damage. And I mean that because you're going to tread switch to the proper tread stat. So 8 more damage and 4 armor and have the active. Comparatively, you get 25 attack speed, the ability to tread switch, which is big. I don't know. I guess the armor sometimes can matter a lot. But in general, on cores, I just don't want to get phase boots unless the only thing that matters is catching people. It is big because it's percentage based, so it's notable, but I don't know, man. Alright, well, that's the end of this video. Only, 13 minutes? That's longer than I thought it was. I'm going to start playing Dota in a minute. I just got to shut this down and restart. Hopefully that gives time for some of our friends to get online anyway, because it's just me and Furry for the moment. Anybody wants to play with us, join. I appreciate you guys for watching. I will see you all next time.